Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through this call, bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy people. You have other things to do. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for some of these other pre-valued currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about what's happening in Iraq today. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or the purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information that we think is relevant. And the most important piece of information, as far as we're concerned, is the potential date for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. We continue to believe, as we've stated for months, that January of 2020 seems to be the most plausible date for a number of reasons. We've discussed this ad nauseum, frankly, but I will be touching on some of that again today. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Iraq. Unfortunately, some of the violent protests continue because there still remains in Iraq a rampant corruption and unnecessary Iranian interference into the internal affairs of Iraq. To that end, there have been scheduled special sessions of the parliament. They've convened to discuss a number of issues. They're going to discuss the demands of the protesters once again and to review the implementation of the Council of Ministers reform package. They have also included another very important item in their discussions, and that is a possible no-confidence vote for the removal of the Mahdi government. Unfortunately, Mahdi seems to be a rather intransigent individual. He's sort of like a Maliki light. He's a pro-Iranian Shiite, and he does not seem at all times to be interested in the nation-state of Iraq. He seems to be fixated on what his Iranian cohorts seem to want of him. That's extremely unfortunate. Now, the removal of Mahdi, if it were to occur, let's say in December, could be a problem for the reinstitution of the currency in January. But if the Sadrists decide that this man has to go, I suspect that they'll move a lot more quickly, and I believe that at the very least they will have proxy individuals in place so that they can proceed in January with all of the other issues that are critical for the advancement of the nation. The reinstitution of the dinar is also at the present time being held up by the United States vis-a-vis the U.S. OFAC sanctions. Now remember, the United States liberated Iraq back in 2003. As a result, Iraq is technically under the jurisdiction of the United States pursuant to the agreement that the Iraqis entered into with the United States in return for the liberation. So the U.S. OFAC sanctions, and OFAC is the Office of Foreign Assets Control. And again, it basically affects countries under U.S. jurisdiction. What these sanctions essentially do is they do not prohibit the purchase or sale of the dinar. Remember, the purchase and sale of the dinar was made available to the American citizen vis-a-vis Executive Order 13303. What the sanction does is it prohibits any of the banks to actually exchange the dinar for some other currency, particularly the U.S. dollar. Now, if Iraq gets their act in order, this sanction could be lifted, say, on day one. The reinstitution of their currency, the Iraqi dinar, could happen as quickly as day two, and the IMF lifting the program rate for the dinar could happen as quickly as day 10. So this could resolve itself very quickly. But once again, the Mahdi government is going to have to come into line, and all of the reforms of the protesters have to be met sooner rather than later. So having said all of that, I'll just conclude with this. Many people have been concerned that these protests are going to postpone the reinstitution for a substantial length of time. That is a possibility. I have to acknowledge that. But I do not think that it's a probability. And this is just my opinion, I believe that the protests are in fact a catalyst for getting everything done so that they can reinstitute the currency in January and move forward. Now, that being the case, people really are running out of time to get their affairs in order. Most of the people that hold dinar are not wealthy, affluent individuals that have a lot of experience managing large sums of money. They're average American citizens, and as such, they really don't understand many of the pitfalls that they're going to be dealing with the acquisition of overnight wealth. To that end, Trusts Unlimited has put a program in place to assist you. It's a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. So let's start with phase 1, which is the establishment of your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts, again with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. There are a number of entities one can establish to provide asset protection. For example, an individual can establish an LLC or a sub-S corporation. Those entities do provide some asset protection, but they are business entities, and they basically separate business liabilities from personal liabilities. However, courts have ruled that if an LLC or a sub-S corporation is owned by one person or a closely held group in the majority, that LLC or sub-S corporation can be pierced for civil litigation. So that makes those entities inappropriate for these currencies, which are personal assets. Some individuals have established something called a revocable trust or a living trust. Now, such a trust can exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate and, in some cases, substantially reduce your exposure to the federal estate tax. But they can provide no privacy or asset protection. So they would be inappropriate in terms of providing the asset protection you're going to need and want. Some individuals have established a single irrevocable trust, and they do provide some asset protection and privacy. However, there is an inherent flaw with a single trust. With a single trust, all of your assets are held within that one entity. And as a result, if any entity within that trust were to be involved in civil litigation, that would necessarily drag all of your other assets and your net worth into that litigation, because it's all owned by the same entity. The only bulletproof asset protection that one can establish to protect themselves fully would be through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and we're going to discuss here today why that's the case. So if you are, in fact, a holder of the dinar and these other currencies, and you do want to provide the asset protection you're going to need and want, here are the reasons for doing so. First, by establishing this package of trusts, you will be preserving your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets held within our asset protection trust package are legally sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package and assigning your currencies to that package, you will successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will certainly be spitting out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it would come along at the very same time that these currencies are revalued. And in addition to that, it creates complications and expenses that would exceed the cost of our asset protection trust package. On the other hand, if your trust is in force and your currencies have been assigned to that trust package, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of this revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for 2 reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if this revaluation were to occur within the trust. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because within this trust package is an exclusive gift subtrust that we have created for our clients. Now, if you wish to gift currencies to family and friends, you're going to need to gift those currencies prior to the revaluation in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves or giving them the entire lump sum in U.S. dollar after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to gift these individuals the USD lump sum, you can gift to them through this exclusively designed gift subtrust. Because you're gifting through this subtrust, their money will be protected along with yours. The language of the subtrust will allow you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can gift these individuals the exact U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. And because you are gifting them through this gift subtrust, you will be able to manage, invest, control, and distribute the money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you 2 quick scenarios. Scenario number 1, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now this estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number 2. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies